I mean, she now contacts spirits on a continuous basis and does it for other people, goes over the waterfall and goes down about 30 feet and is stuck. She's probably underwater for 35 minutes. Of this female butterfly who takes him around and escorts him through higher realms, and you can see where this is going. That's the guide.
Whoa. What do you think happens when you die?
Well, I can say, again, I hate to get into this with, because I don't want to interfere with people's religious beliefs. I would say the evidence is overwhelming that consciousness continues in some form. Now, the question is what form? And I think the biggest issue, sort of unresolved, does consciousness survive or does personality survive? Which are different issues. I mean, some would say you merge into a greater essence, generic consciousness per se. Having said that, we, again, working with mediums, when they report from discarnate people and accurately on, seem to be aware of what's going on in life, and they describe, well, I was this, I was sick, I had this happen. It's all the physical attributes of the person as they existed before. So that there has to be some connection with personality for them to develop that.
That's a good point.
The answer is I don't have a good answer for which is which. There are others that I know of. I'll mention one medium that I have great confidence is Suzanne Giesman. I don't know if you know that name at all. But,
I don't.
Okay, well, Suzanne's a medium. Take hours to get into the whole course there, but she's also a retired Navy commander who is married to a former Navy captain. And she used to be the assistant to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And in fact, when I saw her in 9/11, she was with Hugh Shelton. And I saw her give this presentation. Let's see, Hugh and I used to be majors at the same time in the same place. I said he did a lot better than I did. But so I said, I noticed that you never mentioned his name. And she says, well, I've talked to him. He just doesn't want to be associated. But, Suzanne had never had or knowingly had psychic experiences or anything like that. I think they were sailing off Croatia. She and her husband were, on their own. He had a daughter from a previous marriage who had joined the Marines, was pregnant, and walking across the tarmac and got hit by lightning and killed. And so they came back, and Suzanne started working on, how do I contact Susan? It happened to be the daughter's name as well. And worked on it, and is now one of the premier, she now contacts spirits on a continuous basis and does it for other people, and has one, where it merges is, she has a group called Sanaya, who reports as a singular entity who is saying they are a collection of spirits who are going to collaborating but come forth as a single one. Now, how you wrap your head around that is, really difficult. But, we became friends over, like I say, knowing some of the same people. Her book, what's this to loop back in? Her first book was The Medium and the Doctor, and it was about Anne Gaiman, and Anne is the one who held that fork up that I told you that dropped over that got us interested in PK. Now, how do you interrelate all of those things?
I have no idea. Yeah. When you talk about so we're in the what happens when you die? Do you return to some type of generic consciousness? What do you personally believe?
That's a good question. I'll let you know when I figure it out. I am personally 100% convinced that consciousness continues. Exactly what form that is and all that gets into more difficult territory, certainly. Again, as I said, I was the president of the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and I know most of those key people, and the stories they tell are just I'll digress into one because there's several, but Mary Neal is one of those. And Mary's a medical doctor, lives in Wyoming. She was in northern Chile kayaking. And what's significant about this case are the physical attributes that cannot be denied. So they're out, it's the last day of their kayaking trip, and she's the last. There's her husband, who normally went with them, did not that day. So she's at the trail end, and they're going over pretty good. Now she's highly qualified and can do Cat 3, Cat 4, no problem, which she does. And something happens, and where she wants to go is blocked. So she gets forced to a different direction, goes over the waterfall, and goes down about 30 feet, and is stuck, nose down. Now, she's in there, and you got your kayak, and there's a quick release, but because of the water, the strength of the water come over, can't reach that. Mm-hmm. The way she gets out of it eventually is her legs break above the knee, and it's like bending this way, and gets, they find her, she's probably underwater for 35 minutes. And, the point there is you cannot hold your breath for 35 minutes.
Yeah.
And so there's no doubt about that she probably physically died. And they finally find her body downstream and bring her back, and two guys come out from the shore. Now, again, we're in a remote area of Chile, and they take her. By the way, there's some other miracle things that happen, rocks appear and that. They take her to the waiting ambulance. The point is there are no ambulances in this part of Chile. And there's one that happens to be waiting at the road that takes her in. She also talks about she was out, met God, and those sorts of things, but also had an experience where she is given information that no mother wants to hear. She has 4 small children at the time. And the information is that your son will die at 17. Sure enough, turned 17, car zigs and zags, and does. In fact, she said until a year before that, she didn't even tell her husband about this aspect of it. But here you have, the physical drowning that must have taken place. You see the pictures of her, no doubt about the legs. I mean, that was just awful, and was crippled for a long time. She's an orthopedic surgeon, by the way, and still is. And so you have that. You have these 2 guys appear who, they went back looking for them and aren't there. But you have an ambulance that isn't there, that physically does take her to, the hospital. You have information about events in the future. This is why you get into the question of free will versus, is it predestined that some would be killed at that point? And this is obviously years before, but what decisions could he have made that he might not have been out skateboarding at that time, and yet did happen. So these are the kind of cases when you say, one other guy I will mention is Eben Alexander. I recommend, he wrote Proof of Heaven. No relative, but his case, and what's interesting about him, this guy was a neurosurgeon at Harvard for 25 years, and of course didn't believe in any of this nonsense. And the highlights of his case, he has end-grain meningitis, dies, well, is dying, and taken to his own hospital. I recognize him. So he is out for a week. And said, he knows, again, there's a neurosurgeon who's been teaching neurosurgery. Consciousness could not have been there. And yet he has a whole thing. You can read in his books on what happened to them and all of that. The critical issue I mentioned, I didn't, not a relative, but he was adopted at birth. Turns out that his birth parents married after he was adopted and had more children, so he's got physical. While he is out, wherever this is for this week, he has an escort of this female butterfly who takes him around and escorts him through higher realms. And I mean, he gets into a very complex thing. And one of the reasons you believe in, continuation and, complexity of the universe. So he revives and comes back. Now, he's never met, the birth parents had never wanted to meet, but he now meets them and finds out that this sister, whom he has never met, and he now sees pictures of her. I think you can see where this is going. That's the guide.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Do you have contact with these people?
Oh, yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.